I came to Leap Castle with one purpose: to document religious architecture in pre-Reformation Ireland. The Bloody Chapel was infamous, sure, but I didn't come for ghost stories. I came for stonework, altar placement, and sacred geometry. I'd been granted solo access, an academic favor. The caretaker handed me an iron ring of keys, warned me about loose steps, and added, almost as a joke, "Don't interrupt the Mass if it's already in session." The Bloody Chapel was as cold and silent as a tomb. Gray stone walls bled red in places, stained by centuries of damp and supposedly blood. The altar was still there, crude and crumbling. Behind it, a small alcove in the wall, like a confessional, but black inside. I unpacked my notebook and began sketching. That's when I heard it. A cough, not an echo, not an animal. A dry, human cough from behind the altar. I froze. Then came footsteps, soft, deliberate, on the stone behind me. I turned, expecting a staff member. No one. But the altar, it had changed. There were objects on it now. Fresh wax tapers, a goblet, a rusted dagger. They hadn't been there before. The room began to feel heavy, like the air had deepened, pressing into me from all sides. And then I heard Latin, spoken low, almost whispered, "In troibo ad altere dei." I wasn't alone. I backed toward the entrance, but the door wouldn't move. That's when I saw them, figures, seated in stone pews that hadn't been there a moment ago. All dressed in gray robes, faces blurred like frost on glass. One of them standing, arm raised, blade glinting. Then the altar bled. A man, a priest, appeared mid-kneel, stabbed through the back. Blood poured across the stone, but the priest made no sound, just locked eyes with me, mouth open, gasping, pointing, not at the attacker, at me. I stumbled backward. The pews were empty again, the lights gone, just stone and cold and me, and a wet trail on the floor, my shoes soaked in fresh blood. I finally forced the door open, light flooding the chapel. I turned back once, just for a second, and every candle relit at once. I left that day, but my recordings, they had an extra voice whispering through them, over and over. The Mass never ends. I wasn't supposed to be behind that wall. The caretaker warned me. Some parts of the castle weren't meant to be found. But I'd come to Leap Castle chasing a rumor, not the ghost stories, the history. Specifically, the Oubliette, a medieval pit of execution, hidden in the walls behind the Bloody Chapel. They say hundreds were thrown down there, left to die. Using an old floor plan from the 1800s, I found what looked like a sealed corridor on the western wall, faint crack lines. Late that night, while the last tour group was long gone, I slipped back in with a crowbar and my rigged camera drone. The hidden passage was narrow. It smelled of ash and wet iron. Dust coated everything like powdered skin. At the far end, a rusted grate sealed a hole in the floor. It looked shallow at first, until I dropped a rock. It took 6 seconds to hit bottom. This was it, the Oubliette. I dropped the camera drone in. The live feed showed jagged walls, dark stones slick with condensation and bones. Crushed, compacted bones. There were so many, they seemed to shift as the drone's light passed over them. I told myself it was shadow play. Then something moved. For real. A figure stood motionless in the far corner. At first I thought it was a statue, but as I zoomed in, I saw it was breathing. Then it turned its head toward the drone. Not fast, deliberate, controlled. Its face was blank, just skin stretched tight where its features should have been. And the drone feed? It didn't cut out. It looped. 5 seconds of that thing turning its head, playing over and over. And then came the voice. Not from the drone, from my headset. "You see me. Now I see you." I yanked the drone back up, but halfway up the shaft, snap. The tether severed cleanly, like it had been sliced by something sharp. The feed died instantly. Static. Then silence. I turned to leave, but the corridor had changed. The passage I came in from was now just a flat stone wall. Seamless. No air, no sound, just stone. And then I felt it beneath me. A subtle vibration, like something shifting under the floor, following me. I backed into the corner, pounding at the stone. My flashlight flickered and went out. The only light left came from below, faint and green, like something bioluminescent was stirring in the pit. Then the whispering started, not in my ears, inside my skull. Fall again, fall again. I closed my eyes and told myself it wasn't real. And when I opened them, I was in the castle's foyer, shoes gone, fingernails cracked and bloodied. My camera bag was still strapped on and the drone was inside it, fully intact. But the last footage it had recorded wasn't of the Oubliette. It was of me, sleeping, with the faceless thing standing over me, head tilted, watching, waiting. They said Leap Castle had a presence more ancient than its stones, something that wasn't a ghost, not a spirit. They called it the elemental. I'd heard the rumors. Rotten flesh smell, sudden despair, being watched from inside your own skin. Other teams warned me it didn't just haunt the place, it entered people. It followed. I didn't believe it. I came with 2 assistants, thermal cameras, and grounded skepticism. For the first hour, the castle felt heavy, but no worse than the usual paranormal gig. My gear worked fine. The priest's quarters were cold, yes, but we chalked it up to draft. Then I found the wooden drawer in the upstairs study, dust-covered. Inside it, a half-burnt note from 1895, written in Latin. But part of it had been translated. It is not dead. It only wears what we discard. It found me through memory, through grief. That's when I started smelling it. Burnt sulfur, mold. But no one else did. And then my tech failed, one by one. Battery drain, lenses fogging, EMF spikes. But only when I touched something. My gear worked for the others. I reviewed thermal footage and saw it. Cold zones centered around me, not the rooms. That night in my hotel, I woke at exactly 3:17, choking. My fingers were in my mouth, down my throat, as if something was trying to shut me up. In the mirror, I wasn't alone. A second figure stood behind my reflection, too tall and hunched. I spun. No one. I blacked out, woke on the floor, eyes bloodshot, lips torn from my own fingernails. My assistant said I hadn't answered their knocks for hours. I tried to leave the next morning, but the car wouldn't start. I walked 2 miles to a petrol station before I realized something was wrong. People stopped to stare at me. One whispered to another, "His eyes are wrong." That night, back at my flat, I filmed myself sleeping to reassure myself it was over. At 3:17, the footage showed me sit up, staring into the lens. But here's the thing, I never woke up. Not that I remember. The next night, I found claw marks on the inside of my bathroom mirror. From the other side, I don't know if it ever left. Or if I ever did. Every haunting has a witness. You've just become one. Subscribe and never be alone again.